Hey, good afternoon to you. 506 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Mark Paoletta is going to join us at 5:30. We'll chat with him about the left's latest attacks on the United States Supreme Court. They're vile. Mark will break it down. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Right at the tippy top of the list of the things that we hear from so many listeners about what they care about is just having faith that the election is going to be on the up and up. My next guest is deeply focused on that at the national level. She's Christina Bobb, an attorney for the Republican National Committee, and joins us now. Christina, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to join you.
It is such an important issue, too. Tell us, what's your day-to-day like when it comes to dealing with election integrity?
It's a lot. I'm trying to gather a lot of information, really, because every state matters. You know, of course, we always talk about the battleground states, but I think for 2024, it's all 50 states are the battleground states this time around. So I'm just trying to make sure that we can help, you know, the local state GOPs and get as many people involved at the local level as we possibly can. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump was up in New Jersey recently. He had 100,000 people show up. Of course, I'm sure people from all around the area. But, you know, if a place like Jersey is getting that much action, it does seem important that states that we don't normally think of have sound electoral systems so that Trump might be able to win them fair and square.
Yeah, it's a shocking concept, right, that maybe we'll have a fair election. I mean, it really comes down to the American people getting involved. And I think the 2021 election in New Jersey, speaking of New Jersey, you compare that to the Virginia 2021 election. Those were the two states that had gubernatorial races in 2021. And, New Jersey was largely a repeat of 2020, whereas Virginia was able to secure the election and they got a Republican governor and they were able to make some of the changes that they wanted to make. So, and really the truly key difference there was having people on the ground involved. I mean, Virginia had a massive amount of people involved. So for any of your listeners, if you want to get involved and you want to help this process, please go to protectthevote.com. That's the RNC's initiative to get folks involved so that we can get you credentialed and you can actually work these elections. I mean, that's what we need. We need people working the elections.
So to actually work inside of polling places.
Right, to be an observer. If you want to be an election worker, you need to apply at your county. The counties are hiring people to come in and actually work for the county. You can get, seasonal type shifting. But as far as getting credentialed by the party to be a Republican observer, you'll have to go through protectthevote.com or through your state party to get that credential.
What Christina Bobb does an observer do? So if you're tasked with being an observer on behalf of the Republican Party, what responsibilities do you undertake while you're standing there at that polling place?
Yeah, it's crucial really to raise concerns. So the way it's supposed to work is the observers are assigned, certain locations. They can't go everywhere, but they're allowed to go certain places, whether they're in the tabulation center or polling locations, whatever it is. And as they see problems, they alert the workers, the people who actually work for the county and are tasked with administrating the election, and they alert them and say, hey, this is a problem that I'm seeing. And then they'll also notify their party leads, like whoever's responsible for the Republican observers in, whatever county. You let them know, and that will trigger any legal challenges or any type of follow-on action that needs to come from whatever they're saying they're observing, whatever irregularity they're observing. That triggers a response from the party. Got
it. So if you want to get involved, protectthevote.com is the place to go. I saw that NBC News has a report today. It's interesting. The headline is Republicans vow a robust ballot harvesting operation after years of protest and fraud claims. Now, what's hilarious about this, among many other things, is that Democrats have claimed all sorts of fraud whenever they lose elections through the years. So this idea that Republicans have uniquely flagged concerns about fraud is preposterous. But still, they do emphasize that Republicans are now saying ballot harvesting, so long as it's legal, that is a third-party political operative handling ballots and turning them into the state. Republicans will be doing that this year across the country. Is that right?
Yeah, where it's legal, of course. And, Democrats want to muddy the waters and say, oh, well, they've been complaining about it, saying it's a problem. what Republicans have been complaining about, and this is where the semantics gets confusing, is what I would call ballot trafficking. We are using the same, we as a population are using the same word, ballot harvesting, to mean ballot harvesting, which in some places is legal, but what we really mean is ballot trafficking. It's an illegal operation to effectively harvest and cast ballots on behalf of someone who may not know that you're doing it.
Right. Yeah, we've seen stories, for instance, of Democrat political operatives going into nursing homes and compelling all of the residents in the nursing home to vote for the Democrats up and down the ballot, and then with basically taking advantage, exploiting people at the late stage of life.
Yeah, it's really disgusting and embarrassing what they did, particularly in Wisconsin. I mean, they did it across the country, but the Racine County Sheriff actually did a full investigation on that and referred charges to the district attorney in Racine of the 5 Wisconsin election officials who had sanctioned that activity, saying, hey, this is illegal. It never should have happened. This is election fraud. That was the name of the statute that they were all referred under. And the Republican district attorney refused to prosecute them, and she claimed she didn't have jurisdiction, which to me seems ridiculous. How do you not have jurisdiction to prosecute crimes that occurred in your jurisdiction? Yeah. But she just refused to prosecute.
In terms of
she's a Republican.
Right. Well, in terms of the health of our electoral system now, as opposed to in 2020, we've seen a number of changes. I believe somewhere in the vicinity of 27 states have banned so-called Zucker bucks. That is rich people paying for the electoral systems designed pretty obviously to assist Democrats in those areas. And then we've seen a number of states pass election integrity laws that have definitely improved the quality of their elections, places like Texas and Georgia. How do you assess things now versus 2020?
Well, it's definitely better in the sense that people are aware of what's going on. As you mentioned, there have been some legislative attempts, and even Georgia passing, recent laws. Right after 2020, they got voter ID and all that, and then even now they're trying to make it a little bit stricter, which is helpful for security reasons. Other states have gone the other direction. Michigan is one where now it's an all mail-in ballot. Everybody's going to get a mail-in ballot. I would say Michigan is less secure. There's some other examples of that. Wisconsin, they're trying real hard to get some court cases up to the newly liberalized Wisconsin Supreme Court to try to allow some activity that currently isn't legal. They want to get the court to legalize it before the election. So there's definitely still a battle going on. I think we're in an okay place. Obviously, it's not where I'd like it to be, but it's okay. The key in my mind is people. If you are concerned about fraud taking place in your area, you have to get involved. This is not one of those elections where we can just watch, hope, and pray. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of prayer, but it's prayer plus, right? It's get involved plus. It's vote plus. So, you can go to protectthevote.com. You can go to your state GOP. There's a lot of other really great organizations that are not affiliated with the parties. You can get involved there. But to actually work the election, you'll have to be involved in either a party or with a candidate, with a campaign, in order to get credentials. But I think we're in a good spot, but it all comes down to people. How much do people care to secure their own elections? How
much litigation are you or your fellow Republicans raising right now ahead of these elections? That was the big thing in 2020 was a lot of the courts going, oh, well, you should have brought this up before the election. I understand that there have been a lot of lawsuits now. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, right now I think we have around between 80 and 85 active litigation cases across the country to try to shore up some of these issues, whether it's cleaning up the voter rolls, whether it's non-citizens voting, whether it's ensuring that the Secretary of State are following their own laws and how they administer the election. We've got a bunch of those going on. Nevada's trying to delay their vote count by 4 days, saying they'll count ballots up until 4 days after the election.
Nevada's where Trump is up by like 12 points right now. It's double digits. So Nevada's plan was to try and delay this for up to 4 days after the election?
Yeah, they just passed a law that says they're allowed to count, but effectively they're allowed to count the ballots up until November 9th. The election is on November 5th, 2024, and they're saying for mail-in ballots, we'll count anything up until November 9th, saying it has to be postmarked by Election Day. However, if you can't determine when it was postmarked, then we'll count it. We'll presume that it's countable. We'll presume that it's legitimate. Well, the problem with it is that they use barcodes. They don't postmark. They don't, post date the ballots. It's all done by barcode. So when they say, if you can't tell, presume its validity, that means they're going to presume that all of these extra ballots after the election are valid, which of course allows people to just dump a whole bunch of ballots in to try to change the outcome of the election. So that's ongoing litigation that we're fighting. I feel pretty confident we should be able to win that one. It's pretty clear that violates the Constitution, and it violates a couple federal statutes that determine, we have one election day, and by extending it, they're violating federal statute effectively by creating 5 days rather than 1 day.
Right.
So,
and 5 days after the election. Yeah. No, but prior to the election, there, all across the country, you do have states that are opening up their voting very early, as it's a bit of a legacy from 2020. I know that the RNC's view is that you need to bank your vote, to get that vote in as early as possible to give these Republican candidates a huge lead going into Election Day. Can you give us a sense of the get out the vote effort and what's happening this year?
Yeah. So, bank your vote, get it in early. Whether, some people want to vote on Election Day, they feel comfortable. I'm a big fan of voting on Election Day. It's just my personal preference. But whatever you do, vote. Just make sure you vote, and however your state makes it legal for you to vote, just make sure you vote, however you do it. Right. Get a friend to vote, and more importantly, get involved. As far as the get out the vote, this year is a really interesting year because, Donald Trump can't really go on the campaign trail the way that he normally would. And so getting people rallied for the get out the vote, it's a little bit different. And I love that you raised the New Jersey rally because he had 100,000 people there in New Jersey. And I think what these court cases are doing is I think it's really putting a lot of, I don't know if fear is the right word, but kind of a lot of shock into Americans going, I cannot believe that this is happening in the United States of America. And I think these liberal attacks are really kind of our best to get out the vote effort. People are getting worried about it, and they're contacting us and they're doing it. So of course the campaign has, their initiatives. The RNC has our traditional initiatives, but the liberals, I think, really are our best to get out the vote effort.
Well, the other piece is getting people registered, too, because I keep seeing, I've brought up these numbers a lot. Among Americans who are of voting age but not yet registered to vote, they are wildly supportive of Donald Trump, according to all the available surveys, to the point that Democrats are actually in a panic behind closed doors, some of which has spilled out into the press. They don't want to register more people to vote. They're concerned that they will be Trump voters. So how is the RNC... How is the RNC taking advantage of that phenomenon? Well, I know, Laura Trump has been huge on that, and her voice is so needed and so great. And she's brought on, she's working with Scott Presler. Scott Presler's phenomenal. I mean, he's one of the best, I think, advocates out there for registering people to vote. And I know they have a whole effort on that, political get out the vote front. To be honest, I'm involved in the election security side of it, so it's a little bit different. But I know that they do have a very robust operation that it seems to be going quite well. Good. I love it. Yeah, we talked to Scott Presler, and he sounds like he's setting up in all the right places, the gun shows, the churches, everywhere great Americans like to go. They're trying to register people to vote. Very cool. All right. Well, in the meantime, Christina Bobb, thank you for that update. We're so appreciative of your time and sharing that information with us. We'll have you back again soon, I hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That's Christina Bobb at the Republican National Committee with a big job ahead of her. A lot of people care about election integrity, and she's got responsibility for that there. Coming up on the program, I'm going to be speaking to the great Mark Paoletta about the left's efforts to undermine the United States Supreme Court yet again, this time attacking the wife of Supreme Court Justice Sam Alito. You got to love the left's posture on all of these issues. It's in the same week they're condemning the Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker as some sort of, you're trying to get control of women guy. What a misogynist, which of course he's not. All he did was tell women, don't let anybody demonize your choices. If you choose to be a mother, you should be proud of that. He said, and of course they inverted it. They're like, he told women they've got to be barefoot and pregnant. He didn't say that. First of all, listen. For once in your life, stop talking and listen. Maybe process a little. So they condemn him, but in the very same week, they're telling Sam Alito he needs to get control of his wife. Have you noticed that? It's like, hey, get your wife under control. She's not allowed to have her own opinions. She'd better do exactly what you tell her at all times. And what you tell her is exactly what we tell you to do. That's the attitude they've taken. Meanwhile, in this Butker saga, he's got a great name, right? Harrison Butker. He goes by Butt Kicker on Twitter, which makes sense because he's a kicker. The daughter of the Chiefs owner is a girl called Gracie Hunt, a woman called Gracie Hunt, and she was on Fox this morning. And Steve Doocy asked her, hey, what do you think of Harrison Butker and what he said? Listen to this great answer.
We're going to start with you because the couch would like to know, as America would, the reaction from the Hunt family regarding the kicker, Harrison Butker.
Well, I can only speak from my own experience, which is I've had the most incredible mom who had the ability to stay home and be with us as kids growing up. And I understand that there are many women out there who can't make that decision, but for me in my life, I know it was really formative in shaping me and my siblings to be who we are.
So you understood what he was talking about?
For sure.
Okay.
And I really respect Harrison and his Christian faith and what he's accomplished on and off the field.
See, that's the kind of statement that the NFL should have given that statement in the first place, but they didn't. Instead, they said that Harrison's views are his own. They don't represent the NFL. We're very inclusive. They stiff-armed the guy. At least the owner's family for the Kansas City Chiefs standing up for him. That's a really nice sign and a good statement from Gracie Hunt. All right, coming up, as I said, Mark Paoletta will join us in mere moments. You have a Supreme Court justice's wife who doesn't like how she's being treated like garbage by her left-wing neighbors. She flies the American flag upside down nearly 4 years ago, and now the media is trying to use it to kick him off the Supreme Court. It's a wild story. The details ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
And for a Supreme Court justice, and I will say my opinion only, but the guy most likely to have had something to do with the leaking of the Dobbs decision. Yeah. Leaking it to the Wall Street Journal, or somebody connected to him leaking it to the Wall Street Journal because he wanted to keep Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett frozen in place. I think history will show that. But that aside, for a guy who is a Supreme Court justice that let that happen at his own home in one of the most fraught times in American history since the Civil War is just sad. And it shows how little respect he has for the institution. It shows how little respect he has for the law. It really does. It's disgusting. It's just disgusting.
Joe Scarborough, one of the hosts over on the morning show on MSNBC, complaining today that Justice Samuel Alito apparently had a flag flying out in front of his home nearly 4 years ago that was upside down, an American flag upside down. According to Fox News' Shannon Bream, there's a reason for that. It's because, as she said, she found out from Justice Alito himself that there was a neighbor on their street that had an F Trump sign within 50 feet of where children await the school bus in January of 2021. Mrs. Alito brought this up with the neighbor. According to Justice Alito, things escalated. The neighbor put up a sign personally addressing Mrs. Alito and blaming her for January 6th. Justice Alito says he and his wife were walking in the neighborhood, and then there were words between Mrs. Alito and a man at the home with that sign. Alito says the man engaged in vulgar language, including the C word, directed at, of course, Mrs. Alito. Following that exchange, Mrs. Alito was distraught, and she hung their flag upside down for a short time. Obviously, that's the symbol of distress in the United States. Justice Alito says some neighbors on his street are very political, and he acknowledges it was a very heated time in January of 2021. Now, of course, the left is using this to try and disqualify Sam Alito from the Supreme Court. Dick Durbin says he needs to recuse himself from all election-related cases. For more on this, let's bring in the great Mark Paoletta is here. He's a senior fellow at the Center for Renewing America and the co-editor of the book, Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words. Mark, good to have you back with us, sir.
Hey, Vince, thanks for having me on.
All right, so usually you and I are talking about the left's efforts to take down Justice Clarence Thomas for some ridiculous thing. Now they're setting their sights on Sam Alito. What do you make of this?
Same thing, Vince. They want to destroy the court because they don't control it anymore. This is what this is about right now, which is shrinking the court to have the left-wing preferred justices decide some of these big cases. And what it shows is they're not first, recounting what you were talking about in terms of the neighbors, these so-called neighbors. This is the left on display, and particularly in D.C., right, where I've lived for years. The left likes to think of themselves as the civilized grown-ups, right? But they're not. They're thugs. They're intolerant, right? And they do ugly things like this, like
hateful.
hang signs, hateful. Okay, so Justice Alito has zero reason, absolutely zero reason to recuse on any January 6th case. We don't know why Mrs. Alito put it up. She put it up upside down, according to Sam Alito. Just, as you said, classically the distress sign. But even if it were about January 6th, even if it were about the elections of 2020, there would be no reason for Justice Alito to recuse, because you know what? His wife doesn't have what's called under the recusal statute a legal interest in that case. Okay, she's not a party, she's not a lawyer, she doesn't stand to have any financial interest in the outcome of the case.
Wait.
And this idea of a judge being impartial and fair, when you look at the precedents of what the left has adopted, and what I think is a reasonable view, particularly in terms of the Alitos, they've allowed and they've supported, right? There's a case I talk about a lot because it was written on. There were briefs defending this judge. But in 2011, a left-wing judge, probably the most liberal judge in the federal judiciary, Stephen Reinhart, had a case that had to do with the same-sex marriage ban in California, right? There was Proposition 8 to ban it in the California Constitution. Mm-hmm. The ACLU, Southern California chapter, filed two briefs in the court below. They joined two briefs in the court below. The head of the ACLU Southern California chapter was none other than Judge Reinhart's wife, okay? Ramona Ripston, her name was. They filed two briefs saying it's unconstitutional. It goes up to her husband on appeal. And guess what? Judge Reinhart says, I don't need to recuse. My wife has her own views. I have mine, and I'm going to sit on this case. And the sort of the big dog in left-wing ethics, judicial ethics, is Stephen Gillers. He filed a brief defending Judge Reinhart with a number of other ethics professors and judges, I think, that he didn't have to. What Stephen Giller said was, a century ago, notions like those advanced against Judge Reinhart might have resonated, although wrongfully so. In this day and age, however, a spouse's views and actions, however passionately held and discharged, are not imputed to her spouse, and Judge Reinhart is not presumed to be the reservoir and carrier of his wife's beliefs. Okay?
So by this logic, so let's pretend for a moment that Justice Alito was married to an abortion enthusiast, that Mrs. Alito was super pro-abortion. She just thinks that we need more of them. If that was her position, would he have to recuse himself from the Dobbs decision then?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We had a case, judge in D.C. There's another one. This is getting right to actually a justice, okay? When Justice Ginsburg, who I've written a lot on, trashed President Trump, candidate Trump, in 2016. Remember this? He's a faker. He's a terrible person, and he doesn't release his taxes, and that makes him a disreputable man, right? In 2020, what comes before her? A case on Donald Trump and whether he has to release his taxes pursuant to a congressional subpoena. And she doesn't recuse, and nobody criticizes her, right? She's already taken a position. She hates the man. You could argue with all sort of Trump-related things, but nobody raised a finger or a complaint on Justice Ginsburg. They applauded her for actually attacking Justice candidate Trump, and nobody, said boo about her sitting on that case. Related to that case, in the district court, okay, there was a guy who is the head of the ACLU. He's the national litigation director for the ACLU. His name is David Cole. He's married to, get this, the D.C. Circuit Judge, Nina Pollard. Okay, when that district court judge rules against Trump on his taxes, David Cole writes favorably saying this is the right decision. Trump has it coming to him. Okay, and guess what? Nina Pollard doesn't recuse. from the case when it goes up to the D.C. Circuit en banc. So when you talk about spouses, right, whether it's Ginny Thomas, right, or Martha Alito, wonderful people, strong conservative women, right, they aren't commenting on cases, right? They just have their political views. But the left tries to disqualify their husbands, attack them for even having views.
So at its core, the view here is a misogynist one, that these men need to get control of their wives, that these wives are not allowed agency of their own. They're not allowed to have their own opinions. They can't express themselves. They can't have their own lives. And so what this is just the left's misogyny on display.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And with the Thomases, it's a twofer. It's the racism and misogyny on display, right? So it's, it really reveals and exposes the left for what they are. They don't believe in the rule of law. They don't believe that people, two adults in a marriage can have separate views on something and act according to their oath, right? That's the part that's kind of despicable, right? And in fact, Judge Reinhardt said, my wife doesn't have any legal interest in this case. Here's what it says. My wife has no interest in the outcome of this case that might be substantially affected by its outcome over and beyond the interests of any American with a strong view concerning the social issues that confront this nation. Okay, switch out the names, right? I mean, Martha Alito was not filing a brief in the court below that was going up to her husband.
Right, and there's there's no profit motive or anything either. It's not like she was making any money by flying the American flag upside down in protest of her neighbor's awful treatment of her. That how in the world could that even amount to a quote conflict of interest?
It just gets so tiresome, but we have to respond to the left's assault on the Supreme Court. Again, I'll give you another example because there's just tons and tons of them. And, Ruth Ginsburg's, Justice Ginsburg's husband was at a firm that routinely appeared before the Supreme Court. Okay? She never recused from a single case. Right? He's a member of the firm. He wasn't appearing, but you know what? He's a member of that firm. That sounds pretty good. She raised money, right? She auctioned off a signed opinion in the VMI case, which was the ruling that women have a right to attend VMI, to raise money for the pro-abortion group now, and never recused on a now case or a NARAL case. So the left is absolutely, they don't believe in ethics, okay? What they believe in is power, and they want to take out this court because they don't control it anymore, right? For 50 years, 60 years, it's always been, no matter whether it was a Republican or Democrat president, the appointments, right, were just, not very good, sadly, right? The Kennedys, the Souters, the Blackmans, just think about it, the Stevens. I mean, liberal justices. Now, because of President Trump, right, and his appointments, we have a court that is no longer left of center or left, and the left hates it, and that's why they want to attack Justice Alito and Justice Thomas in particular.
And what they don't, you're exactly right. And it's not that the court has become like a Republican, although you'll hear that from time to time from the left. What it's done is it's become less political. The left has politicized the court for so long and used it as a sort of de facto legislative branch. That they're offended that they can't do that anymore, and that the court would get in the way of any of their agenda items is what offends them. So, for instance, this very week, we had a big decision yesterday about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it was a 7-2 decision. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the majority opinion. On the opposite side of the question from him was Justice Sam Alito and Justice Neil Gorsuch. They were the two dissenting. In other words, they're not walking in lockstep on some sort of Republican agenda. They're assessing the merits based on their understanding of the Constitution and the law and then rendering judgments. This is not the way the left operates.
That's exactly right. And I'm glad you pointed it out because, these are originalists that are doing their best, their honest best to figure out what those provisions meant at the time and whether whatever's going on right now accords with that. And come what may, right? And that's, Justice Thomas has been pilloried for years and years and years for doing that. Some of the other justices now are feeling that heat, and it's important. It really is important for people to stand up against these attacks because you're seeing it right now, right? You're seeing now they've gone into overdrive again on we need to win the election in 2024, and we are going to pack the court. In fact, I think Hank Johnson, I saw. I'm traveling, but I think I saw a tweet from him that he started a new outside group or working with us. And the first thing is we need to pack the court. And so they don't, if the court is not giving them their decisions, then they need to change it. It's illegitimate. Vince, you and I grew up watching the Supreme Court disappoint us time and time again, right? We didn't go attack justices, go outside their homes, threaten them, threaten their children, march in front of their homes, try to assassinate justices, right? That is what the left is doing because they can't stand the idea that they don't control this court anymore, and therefore it's illegitimate and it needs to be burned to the ground. And I'm not saying that to be sort of over the top. This is really what's going on. And, the justices have to live with 24-hour security. I mean, I know this. And the left is happy with this. They want to make their lives a living hell and their spouses' lives a living hell.
So I take your point, and it's a great one, Mark. And even if they don't succeed in literally burning down the court, which it seems to be that's the direction we're headed, as you point out, what they have done is they've definitely undermined the credibility of the court. They've gone out of their way to use all of their various media vehicles to tell people that there is no chance of fairness in the United States Supreme Court, that this is a failed institution that is out to get you. It is totally captured and on and on and on. What is the impact of that when you make false allegations like that about an institution like the Supreme Court? What does that do to the country?
Again, the Supreme Court is our crown jewel. And when you lessen faith in it, when you make, it's not just that I disagree with their opinion, it's that they're corrupt, right? It's dangerous because, I think there was talk at some point with some members saying you don't need to listen to Supreme Court opinions, right? Again, here's the rule of law, so-called rule of law party. They're not, right? They're a power party that wants everyone to fall in line with their views. And in the sort of short term, it's that they try and shrink the court, meaning try and knock off justices, pressure them to resign, to recuse, or, pressure them to not kind of stand up for their oath and write the opinion the way it should be written, faithful to their what the actual kind of answer is. So it is dangerous. And it's not going away. That's the scary thing here is that this has been going on for several years. It started, back in January 2022 with Jane Mayer, who apparently is writing a book to attack the conservative legal movement. But it's just this unbelievable, unprecedented attack on the court. And that's why I'm pushing back on these things and writing on this. And I direct your listeners to markpaoletta.com, where I have a lot of articles, probably 50 op-eds, going through all the lies of what the left says, why none of this adds up, why it's in fact the left that is actually does these unethical things that the left is perfectly fine with. So I'm glad you're focusing on it, Vince, and we just need to expose why this doesn't add up at all, why this is actually just an attack on the court.
Mark Paoletta, thank you as always. You always bring receipts on this topic because the left tells a lot of lies and you cut through them so well. Thank you very much. Good to talk to you today as always. Penny calling in from Burke now, line one. Hello, Penny. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. It amazes me that with every move that the Democrats make, they show how much they hate women. Whether it is attacking Supreme Court wives or the support of men playing women's sports, the only time a woman gets any respect is if she's chiming up and saying that men dressed as women should be able to compete in their sport. They hate women, and they especially hate Christian and conservative women.
And they seem to prove it at every turn, don't they, Penny? It's really an amazing thing. You can set your watch to it. Does the left hate women? Yep. At this moment, right now. Oh, and every other moment, unfortunately. You hate to see that, and you pray for change, and you work for it. Thank you, Penny, very much. Thank you to all of you for being here with us. Please have an excellent weekend. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next right here on the legendary WMAL. Back with you Monday.